Shattering by Timothy Harada. This novel is based on true stories. Most of the names have been changed to protect the innocent and guilty alike. Prelude. The field was empty. The only animate life which stirred was a joyful grasshopper dancing on a newly sheared lawn. She danced, oblivious to her onlooker, the shrewd Officer Sajak, who sat guard in his revving patrol golf cart as it belched noxious exhaust fumes into the sweet-smelling September ocean breeze. Sajak was stationed at the westernmost corner of the school's athletic field. He vigilantly displayed his honorary rent-a-cop talents, lest any devious skater should violate the city's newest in a million worthless ordinances, banning the use of skateboards in public. Or was it just on the sidewalk or city streets? But then where else would they skate? Or should he be so lucky to, on this the first day of school, catch a vile escapee who attempts to leave the compound before the last class is dismissed? It seemed the laws grew stricter and stricter, month after month, year after year. As if with a mind of their own, they tried fecklessly to keep abreast with the local paper's boast of this being, quote, the safest city in America. I guess it just depends on whose side you're on. With only a few minutes left before the grand bell tower blared out the chimes of Westminster, signaling the students' departure, this ever-ready narcotics officer, Narc Spoojwhack as the kids tagged him, waited in weary anticipation, afraid his day might have been better spent employing his time in a local donut shop. But he was determined before the day was up to catch some little punk lighting up a cigarette, or heaven forbid, crossing the street between the two controlled intersections that hug the campus on both north and south. In direct response to the city government's ever-growing oppressiveness, the kids grew year by year more defiant. Like weeds that break through the city streets, they prove the forces of life only grow stronger against the countervailing forces which attempt to suppress them. He felt little honor keeping watch over a section of the city's greatest historical landmarks. Built in 1908, this high school, with its double-decker auditorium, newly remodeled Coliseum-style football stadium, and once-filled Olympic-sized pool, now drained like the city's budget, thanks to the newest addition in the police station's arsenal of, quote, peacekeeping devices, the Bell Notar Chopper. This mammoth buzzard is but one of the two police helicopters which can be heard on any street corner and into the wee hours of the night circling overhead, sure to disturb anyone's peace should they try to enjoy a salubrious picnic in Central Park or nap on the beach on a Saturday afternoon. In the brief moment of silence before the bells chimed, Officer Sajak had a slight instance of introspection. As the sun beat down on his black soiled dare cap, causing perspiration to trickle down his long forehead, he heard the voice of his father echoing in his memory. What do you want to do with your life? Life, life. The largest profession in the city was membership to the Boys Club-style omnipresent police force. Any tourist visiting downtown wouldn't have to be foolish to believe that there were at least one or two officers per capita. Anywhere anyone was willing to display openly his or her free spirit, a cop was surely there to repress it. Sajak failed entry-level admissions testing into the ominous police academy due to his weak physical strength, which had been worsening ever since his knee injury 5 years prior in his short-lived junior college football career. But he wouldn't give up on his dream of wearing a real badge and carrying a real man's gun. And thanks to his few years' experience as a security guard in the local mall and his high school brainwashing in junior ROTC, he landed this job, quote, babysitting snotty-nosed kids, as he called it. He knew he would have to pay his dues to see those dreams materialize. In the height of meditation, he was suddenly awoken by a heralding ding-dong, ding-dong. The whole town was accustomed to this hourly song, a tribute to that ragged European empire whose folly the city and state's elites tried desperately to emulate. The people of this city wouldn't even need a watch. After the chimes of Westminster, The bells would sound out the number of hours passed in the day. As the number of chimes grew, so did the victims of the city's authoritarian guards. It was with this cacophonous toll that the children gushed from their classrooms, pouring down the stairways like an overflowing underground eruption. The student body of Wutherington Beach High, all glazed eyes, the descendants of those greedy manifest destiny-touting robber barons who stole this fertile land of Alta California some 1.5 centuries ago from Mexico and other hapless natives. Though the state bore little resemblance to her past history, the karmic retributions of their forefathers' thievery were still being strongly felt. The two plates of land still grinding up against each other at the so-called San Andreas Fault shook frequently. A state of once massive wetlands, covered by thirsty land developers, caused a year-by-year increase in flooding. A corporate prison industrial complex growing like a tumor at a ferocious pace, infected and devoured whole segments of the so-called underclass youths, whom incarcerated made easy targets for corporate America's revisited attempts at slave labor. And with a gaping hole in the ozone and increased greenhouse gases, the summer heat seemed to grow almost intolerable at times, and caused a change in climate at a rate unparalleled in human history. This dreamland was once thought by Cortez's men to be the island of Califia. Now this land of Epsilon far better resembled a volcano ready to explode. From where would a solution be found to this society's many quandaries? Who would rise from the swampland of growing despair and offer the fresh, fragrant wisdom so needed by the people? Chapter 2. The First Day. Yo, Nate, what are you trying to beat everyone home to do your homework? You can't even fucking read. WC called across the street to his friend Nathan, who was walking faster than usual. Shit, get your ugly ass over here. What, do I have to fucking babysit you again this year? He responded jokingly. The two boys always walked home together last year while in middle school. Nathan never expected life to be any different this year. WC darted across the street, hoping Sajak wasn't in view, and with a loud, hollow thud sound, limpied Nathan on the back of the head. Nathan quickly responded by giving WC a Charlie horse. Dude, did you see Lori Thompson in history class? Laughing off the soreness of his leg, WC reminisced, smiling devouringly. I know, shit, it's a wonder what the California sun will do to a chick's tits over the summer. He answered, gesticulating with his hands in front of his chest. Yeah, watermelons are sure in season this year. Giggling loudly, they kept commenting down Main Street about their first day of high school. Both boys were quite tanned, having spent most of their summer breaks at the beach, body surfing and skateboarding. They resented not being able to bring their skateboards to school this year, especially with the farther walk home than last year. Why isn't Chris with you? We're going to meet him at Lake Park, answered Nathan nonchalantly. Are you guys going to smoke some bud or what? WC didn't seem as interested as last year. What, you got the mods? Shit, are you stoned or just stupid? What, the summer sun dried up your brain juice? Made you forget how to walk walls? Joked WC. No, just thought I'd save some sweat, dweeb. The boys never bought their herb. It was in ample supply in most backyards, and they were experts at borrowing from their neighbors. Nevertheless, Nathan Phelps was always trying to get W.C. Jensen and Christopher Andrews to do all the dirty work while bathing in all the unwarranted reward. Nathan was, despite his lack of intelligence, an instinctively brilliant con man who could, with his overt ignorance, make anyone feel sorry for him unless they helped him out. He was a fairly good-looking, straight, sandy blonde-haired, except when he dyed it and put it up in Liberty spikes to shock his teachers, parents, and friends, husky-built kid who believed religiously rules are made for young boys to find a way around. A modern-day Huck Finn or Dennis the Menace, he tried in every possible way to convert other kids to the ways of his religious convictions and tried to get them to do his bidding. In a troglodytic way, he walked with his head bent forward, slightly hunched back, with his pants sagging down, somewhat revealing the crack of his rear end. Neither he nor any of his acolytes carried books home, and he didn't intend on doing any homework, another one of those rules he cleverly avoided. However, he somehow managed to make it all the way to high school by either looking off a classmate's paper or by making some weaker kid do his assignments. WC had all the brains in the group, though he didn't let others know. Up until then, he was the pacifist who just went along with Nathan's ploys to avoid a fight. He was quite a bit thinner than Nathan and had no inclination to push anyone around, even if he could. He had a glowing face with hazel brown eyes, which always showed a sign of compassion. He had wavy blonde hair, though on occasion he had it decked up in spikes and seldom dyed it odd colors to give it a little shock value. Both boys wore studded earrings in their left ears, and at times long dangling ones, adorned with anarchy symbols or spiked balls, anything to get people's attention. His friends called him Debut, an honorary title attributed in part to his originality. He was a new breed of Xers. He often signed his name Debut X, the last name a play on words, a reversal of Malcolm X's idea. Where Malcolm couldn't possibly know his father's ancestral name, thanks to slavery, Debussy asserted, having been raised by a long line of mothers who had to give up their names to patriarchy, how can I possibly know my real name? He boasted, if he ever got married, he would definitely take his wife's name. Secondly, the X was a sign of his growing belief that he would be the only redeeming voice of his forgotten, downsized, X'd-out generation. He was a radically free thinker, often to an exaggerated degree, a modern-day Socratic gadfly who loved to defy convention and question reality. Lastly, the X stood for his dead father's last name, Xanthakis, which he could only use in secrecy, which his mother X'd out when Mr. Xanthakis left this world for greener pastures. As they crossed the street to Lake Park, Nathan gave Debussy a flat tire. Debussy tried getting Nathan back by sticking his leg out to trip him. Unfortunately, as Nathan would have done the same thing, he instinctively saw it coming. Yeah, right. I'm not as dumb as you look. Think I'm going to fall for that crap? But as Nathan walked backwards, laughing at Debussy, who struggled to put his shoe back on, Nathan wasn't paying attention to the curb, which he was heading straight for. Consequently, he tripped flat on his back in the damp grass of Lake Park. Christopher, who sat waiting on a park bench, seized the opportunity while Nathan was down to run up and limpy him on the head. Laughing, Christopher ran off through the park as Nathan tried to chase him. Nathan was the slowest amongst the three. Christopher knew he couldn't possibly catch up. Despite his asthma, Christopher ran circles around Nathan, cracking up hysterically. However, as Christopher was only paying attention to his temporary opponent, and there were never, as a rule, any teams in horseplay, Debussy approached from behind and kicked one of Christopher's legs out behind the other. He brought Christopher down into the dampened grass, where both boys dogpiled on top. Then, due to his weight, Nathan managed to get atop and started dead-legging his two opponents. Finally, when Nathan felt too tired, he rolled off and said, as if nothing had happened, "Okay, you wimps, get off your ugly asses and let's get stoned." They all got up laughing, repeating the mantra, "Let's get stoned, let's get stoned." Christopher did it out of a sense of coercion, Debussy out of a force of habit. Both were less enthused than Nathan, who would smoke pot 24 hours a day if only he had the resources, though due to his lazy nature he never would. Although Christopher and Debussy were hurting a little from being under Nathan's weight, it wasn't considered cool to show any pain or hold any grudges. Christopher also had to hide the fact that he was sort of pissed his new pants had gotten soiled. He knew Nathan would only make fun of him. He was the only one whose family could afford such nice clothes. Nathan called Christopher "preppy boy," because the latter's pants were never frayed at the bottom like the former's. Both Nathan and Debussy would simply put together flannels and jeans from different thrift and second-hand stores to have clothes to wear for school. Shattering by Timothy Harada. Chapter 3. Walking Walls. Was always in your heart. Now it's begun to grow. It reaches to the sky. As soon as they walked through the park and through some tract houses, they climbed concrete walls that separated the yards of each house that circled the park. They were seasoned wall walkers, who could even run the walls if the job called for it. Both Debussy and Christopher could beat Nathan cold getting atop the wall. Though once Nathan got up, he fared pretty well staying abreast with the other two. Debussy usually walked in the forefront, while Nathan made a great caboose. Nathan was always ready to smart off with anyone who tried to give them any trouble for trespassing. Once he told off an old man who yelled, "Hey, what are you kids doing on my property?" His quick response to this capitalist, as Debussy calls anyone who places such importance in private property, was, "Unless you plan on giving us a ride home or getting rid of that stupid skateboard law, we'll just have to keep taking the shortcut. The closest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Not our fault you had to position your stupid house in the straight line between our homes and school. Us students are claiming eminent domain on this wall, which is in the way of our direct path home." Debussy and Christopher were surprised Nathan remembered anything from geometry. Angrily, the man replied, "If I see you on my wall again, I'm going to have to call the police. Instead of gawking like a head with your chicken cut off, why don't you get your ugly ass up here and do something about it?" Nathan spit back at him. With this final gesture of contempt for the homeowner, Christopher and Debussy picked up their pace to a jog. Nathan, however, knowing the old man couldn't get 1 foot on the wall, being about as big as the old fart, Nathan fearlessly sauntered on, not letting the man's grumbles faze him in the least. Today, hopefully no one would intrude on their journey. As they made jokes about each other, Debussy suddenly stopped short in his tracks. "Shh, guys, shh, look! Look at that beauty!" Nathan pointed with one hand, the other to his lips. "We've struck gold, baby," Christopher whispered excitedly. Debussy and Christopher were more excited about the adventure of discovery and confiscation than they were about the rewarded treasure they received at the end of their journey. Debussy thought of how Alexander the Great would give away his treasures to his army after a war and declare, "All I need as rewards are my hopes and dreams." It was the chase, not the catch, that inspired these adventurers. However, as long as Nathan would receive the final glory of the catch, he assumed leave the chase to Christopher, Debussy, and anyone else he could convince to do the dirty work. Needless to say, they made a perfect team. "What? I don't see it," Nathan grumbled. "Shh, you're gonna blow it, dude." Nestled tightly between a tool shed and a fence, wound with tomato vines, a perfect camouflage for anyone entering the yard from the sliding glass door of the house, sprouted a healthy bush with long buds dripping with resin. "Damn, would you look at the size of those buds?" Christopher said in a soft, excited whisper, almost hyperventilating. Nathan finally caught sight of it. "Fuck, party!" "Okay, Chris, you take the front, I'll take the back, and Nate, you cover." Debussy strategized quickly. They had the art down to a T. Nathan broke in. "Wait,
That's one damn big weed. It's going to be a bitch pulling up. It'll take a heavyweight. Remember last time? Who could forget last time? It took two to pull up the plant, leaving Christopher with no backup, and they almost got caught. They had quite a routine, but on occasion, not all went as planned. Luckily, Debussy's brother, Zeus, had a paper route, so they were accustomed to soliciting door to door for new customers. They had their alibi all worked out. One of them would go to the front door, knock, and pretend to be soliciting for paper. If no one answered, he would whistle to his backup, who stayed on the side of the house keeping guard. The backup would then whistle to the one in the rear, who would jump into the backyard, grab the plant, scale the wall, then finally whistle to the backup and solicitor, letting all know the deed was done. Debussy finally decided, with the help of Nathan's persuasion, he'd go to the front door. Christopher reluctantly would stand cover, while Nathan would fetch the plant, this time actually doing a little work for the glory. All took their places as Debussy knocked on the door with his heart in his mouth, each second nervously expecting someone to answer. After a minute or so, he tried once more, just to be double safe. When no one answered the second time, he whistled to Christopher, who volleyed back to Nathan. Nathan breathed in deeply, touched his head, chest, then his shoulders, jokingly to Christopher, who still believed that superstitious stuff, the Father, Son, and so on. He loved making fun of it. After another breath, he jumped down. "Oh, damn!" He landed and fell to his side as his ankle gave way. "Shh," protested Christopher. "We're going to get caught." Christopher was always pretending bravery beforehand, and today was no exception. He started breathing heavily, afraid someone might have heard Nathan's fall. He looked around nervously. After a moment's pause, Nathan stood up and brushed the dirt off his knees. With a slight limp, he jogged over to grab his prize. He pulled with all his strength, making a grunting sound, and then repeated attempts caused him to fall on the ground. Meanwhile, Debussy, noticing a car pull around the corner, heading straight for the house, became nervous. His breath grew heavy. As if in freeze frame, he could see the car signal and turn up the driveway. Under his breath, he sighed. Fuck. He had no time to signal to Christopher. Suddenly, he was at a loss of what to say. As he tried to collect his thoughts, the car door opened. As if in slow mode, a well-dressed man with arms full of groceries stepped out, wearing an irritated look on his face, which seemed to say, "Get lost, kid. I've had a long day." Debussy, now shaking slightly, gulped and gave the following delivery. Hi, sir. He couldn't for the first time, as if this unwanted visitor had stole the words from his memory, remember his lines. "Well, I'm selling papers," following this with a half self-deprecating smile. He was trained to never say those last two words. His normal spiel was, "I'm involved in the Wutherington Post's after-school youth program, Save a Teen. We're helping keep kids out of gangs," as if there were any gangs in this suburban paradise. "We're giving neighbors a special chance to start up a 1-year subscription at a reduced price, at the same time helping to save a teen. You see, the first month's cost will go straight to the Save a Teen Foundation." Debussy didn't really believe any of this money would actually be used for its supposed purpose. He rarely trusted the legitimacy of any organization, and he had much less faith in capitalistic institutions, whose main purpose was to reap a profit. but knowing they were using him, he felt it was his duty to use them back with a vengeance. Not only did he make money from Munchies, he also stood to get a weekly trip to Punchy's Pizza and Arcade if he got 2 new customers. He would also be rewarded with $5 in tokens to entertain his addiction to video games. However, as he missed every line of his well-rehearsed speech, his solicitee remarked, "I have no time for papers." Fighting his nervous convulsions, Debussy struggled to buy time by rebutting the man's objection. "Well, you see, sir, you can be helping our youth program." And then, gritting his teeth at his terrible rebuttal, he tried to catch the fumble, but again sapient words wouldn't come. Meanwhile, Nathan, still struggling in the backyard, gave up on pulling out the plant with his hands. Instead, he proceeded to kick the bottom of its trunk to break it off. This only further aggravated his twisted ankle. Eventually, he managed to split the trunk and, twisting it in circles, finally broke it off, but at the expense of smashing a few large, low-hanging buds, which remained scattered on the ground. Limping, he carried his prize, with sweat on his brow and a full smile on his face, unconscious of Debussy's struggle in the front. "Shit, look at this! Ha ha!" "Shh," whispered Christopher. "You're gonna fucking blow it." As he handed the plant up to Christopher, they heard the front door slam, which prompted Christopher to shove the plant in the bag and run along the wall as far away from the house as possible, leaving Nathan helplessly trying to scale the wall alone with his hurt foot. Then, when Nathan heard the back door being unlocked, he gave up on the climb and jumped between the tool shed and the brick wall. He laid there amongst cobwebs, trembling, with his face planted, kissing the dirt, holding his breath, hoping he wouldn't get caught. The man grabbed his garden hose and was preparing to water his plant, when to his surprise he noticed his purple-haired sesamilia had been replaced with a mound of dirt and some scattered leaves. He screamed out at the top of his lungs, "God motherfucking damn!" He followed the track of dirt to the wall, where he can see Christopher running on the wall, about 5 houses down, with the bag spilling dirt out of the top. The man knew he couldn't catch him on foot, so he ran through the house, jumped into his car, and peeled out the driveway, leaving the back and front doors wide open. As Nathan heard the tiles squeal away, he got up, wiped the cobwebs from his hair, brushed the dirt from his clothes, and made a quick break, limping through the house. He stopped halfway through to swipe some adult magazines off the bookshelf as souvenirs. Then, out the front door he ran, the opposite way of the car, through the neighborhood. Christopher, knowing the man might try to head him off at the end of the row of houses, made the most of his athletic ability. He jumped into one of the yards and climbed over a fence that led through an industrial area. Then ran through some oil fields and quickly lost the unfortunate old man.